I am live. It's just you and me, but we are live with Noha Abou-Hashima. I don't think I've ever said your last name.
Guess not.
Am I saying it properly?
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. So Noha, what is your official title in the land of Rockstar here?
I guess I'm marketing assistant and copywriter.
And copywriter. Mm-hmm. What did you start out as?
Marketing assistant and content creator, I think it was.
Yeah. We were going for the same job and you got the job.
Damn straight.
And they were like, I don't know, I think maybe we'll give this guy some other job. But you got the job.
Yeah, you wouldn't take no for an answer, apparently.
Yeah, well, neither would you, apparently. Well, I don't think you ever got a no, actually. But you've stuck around. Mm-hmm. And it's been 5 years now with Rockstar. So both of our 5-year anniversary was this past March. What has it been like?
That's crazy to think about.
It is, eh? It flies.
Yeah, especially because, like, I don't know, like maybe 3 out of those 5 years are just blocked out of my memory.
Yeah, with like COVID.
Pandemic years.
Well, yeah, we started 2019 and then about a year in, yeah, COVID hit, and then it was work from home and chaos and 33% of the money supply is printed and lockdowns and...
Yeah, so that was weird. But
that was weird, wasn't it?
That was an understatement, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's definitely been good. I mean...
Just come up to the mic a little bit.
Yeah, overall, it's definitely been good. I would say, like, I mean, it's the longest I've ever really worked anywhere is Rockstar. Like, I've never worked anywhere else for 5 years.
Same.
Or even, I don't think I've even finished 1 year at any place I've ever worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like...
What's kept you long for 5 years?
It's definitely like the environment here. Like, it's a great place to work. There's a lot. I'm doing a lot of things with, like a lot of interesting things with marketing that I haven't really done in like my other marketing jobs. I certainly have never really dug into like copywriting or kind of like that kind of, you know, marketing that we do here with like, you know, very personalized, very silly sometimes. Just, you know, like never really done that either. So it's just been one big learning experience all those 5 years. Yeah.
What have you learned about this type of marketing versus more traditional marketing you were doing in the past?
Well, I guess it's just been completely brand new because I went to university for kind of like a marketing program, and this was definitely not part of the course material. Yeah, so it's just been like really interesting. It's been pretty exciting to be a part of too.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've grown a lot being here?
I would say so, yeah. Not just even in marketing, in a lot of other areas.
Yeah, personally speaking.
Yeah.
But then also, I feel like both of us, our viewpoints have totally radically changed since working here in how we look at the world, how we perceive, you know, I think some of the broader social issues going on, and now can relate it back to economics, learning from, you know, Tom and Nick and all the other people like Jeff Booth and, you know, all the other people we now listen to because of Tom, Nick, really. But we just look at things differently. And it's hard to go back to normie land a little bit, isn't it?
I think it's impossible at this point.
Do you think without Rockstar, you would have caught on to some of this stuff? What's going on with money printing, the debasement of our dollar, the fact you need to own assets? Do you think you would have caught on if you had just found some traditional marketing job instead of this one?
I want to say yes, but the answer is probably no. Like, to me now, I'm interested in it, so it feels natural. Like, it feels normal to be like, yeah, like this is the stuff I'm interested in. But before then, I might have dug into the money a little bit because I was kind of thinking about that before I joined Rockstar.
Why is that?
It just hit me like when I got my first job and I realized like, okay, I need to like, you know, invest it now. And I was just looking at, you know, stocks and TFSAs and RSPs and all of that stuff. I was never convinced of the concept of an RSP. I just didn't really like the idea of like, oh yeah, my money's locked away and if I want it out, I have to pay a tax on it. Like, that was just crazy to me. I was like, no, I don't want to do that.
Did some of your experience growing up in Egypt and Saudi Arabia shape how you viewed money?
I wouldn't say so, because I mean, like, growing up in Saudi, like, I didn't think about money at all. Like, it wasn't something that I thought about. I didn't really have a job there. Like, most kids there don't really work.
Yeah.
Until you, like, graduate school and you get, like, an adult job.
And by then you're in Canada.
Yeah, and by then I was already here. No, I think it's just, like, for me, with, like, not wanting to be locked into RSP, I think that was just, like, I think that's just a me thing. I just don't like to be kind of, like, I prefer to be in control of what I own, essentially. So the idea of, like, having my money locked in someplace, I'm like, no, it just doesn't really match who I am as a person.
So did you ever get into stock investing at all?
A little bit. I was doing, like, those, like, what do you call them? Like, the mutual funds and stuff.
Yeah, index funds.
Yeah, just, like, I think I was using, like Wealth Simple or whatever.
Yeah.
I wasn't, like, day trading or anything, just kind of like very passively putting money into this equity or mutual fund and, waiting for it to grow.
Yeah.
It's like investing. I was, like, being smart with my money.
Yeah.
And then I learned that was not very smart.
Why do you say that? Why do you say it's not very smart?
Well, it's because, like, like, I ended up learning about, okay, how inflation works, how kind of, like, where fiat money comes from, just, all of that.
Yeah.
All of that good stuff.
So you decided to purchase your first rental property, which is a really big deal, because you're young, as am I. And it's not really something a lot of young people are thinking about doing, buying a rental property, especially before you buy your first property yourself to live in, which both you and I have done, and you partnered up with your sister to do it as well. So what inspired that?
So with the real estate, so I think at some point I probably would have wanted to own a rental property.
Yeah.
But I think that maybe if I wasn't working at Rockstar, I would have, like you said, like, I would have probably owned it after I bought a house, after I've kind of, like, established myself in a career a little bit, have some savings, then it would be like, like a supplemental to my income. Because it's kind of like what my parents did.
Okay.
So that's probably that would have been, like, the route I take.
Yeah.
But no, like, it's like, this rental property is the first and only house that I have. And it is just kind of like, after learning about hard assets and why single family homes and stuff are a good hedge against inflation and all of that. So why I did it with my sister, because I couldn't do it by myself.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, I think I spent about a year just convinced that I'm going to be able to do this by myself. And I was like, okay, if I really, go all in on saving my money and paying off my student loan, I'll be able to qualify for something, and I'll be able to, like, get it by myself. Because I really wanted to do it on my own. But then eventually, like, after I paid off my student loan and stuff, and I was talking to Dan from Better Mortgage Select at the time, and whenever, like, we would, like, run the numbers, he'd be like, yeah, you only qualify for this much.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not going to get me anything.
This much doesn't buy me anything.
No.
Doesn't buy me half a condo.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even that.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll just have to, like, find someone to partner with. And I figured some of my friends already own their own homes. Like they have, like, with their boyfriends or whatever, they have real estate.
Yeah.
So I didn't think that they would want to own, like, a rental property, and I didn't want to have to, like, for me, convincing my sister was easier than convincing a friend of mine, because I can just,
just headlock her.
in a way.
Just force her into it, hack her bank account.
It was just easier to convince.
Yeah. Is she older?
No, she's younger.
Younger? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. How much younger?
3 years younger.
3 years younger. So got it. So yeah, she's quite young too to pick up her first property.
Yeah. And that was a couple of years ago.
And what was the pitch? Like, while working at Rockstar, were you translating some of the things you were seeing, some of the success stories from the members, what you had seen people accomplish in real estate over the long run, and, like, where, what freedoms they had in their life now? Were you communicating the inflation aspect and breaking the numbers down? What were those conversations like?
Yeah, I was probably talking more about, like, inflation and money. And just how like our money, like there's no really point in saving your money in like a savings account because, it's just all getting debased. Yeah, it's just all getting debased. Like inflation, like you're not outrunning inflation just by putting some money away, even though that is the right thing to do. It's just not really, it's not actually helping you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was most of the pitch. I don't think I was talking about like the whole live life on your terms as much. I was just kind of like real estate. Like if you really want to kind of save your money, you want to actually protect it from inflation, then the best place to put it in is something like a single family house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, real estate started out as like an aspirational thing. Like, okay, I want this certain lifestyle. I want to grow my wealth, and real estate seems like a way that a lot of wealthy people have done so. And then it became like a fear-based thing, which is like, it's getting harder and harder to buy any asset, let alone a single family property in Southern Ontario. Then it became like, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to be able to, and the window's closing. And then it became less of like, imagining myself retiring early and that stuff to, okay, I don't know what my future looks like if I don't start owning assets immediately, and I need to drop everything I'm doing and buy something that I can have my name to.
Yeah.
It kind of became that urgent for me.
Yeah. I had like some of the similar FOMO, but I was just tapped out by that point.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of, I guess that's kind of like one of the reasons I ended up getting into Bitcoin as well, is just because, I maybe the bank is not going to give me, $500,000 to buy a house, but I can put a little bit of money into Bitcoin each time. Like that's kind of like my savings account.
Yeah.
And unlike a savings account you'd have at a bank, this one is not, it's not getting debased, right?
Yeah. And it's kind of a different mindset than real estate investing, because you're rewarded for taking on debt, at least that you can manage. With real estate, you have to, if you're going to leverage, you got to leverage smartly. Mm-hmm. So you have to do it intelligently, but you're also rewarded for taking on that debt intelligently. And Bitcoin will just smash you to bits if you take on debt to buy it, because it's so volatile, and it really rewards long-term saving, which is like how our parents grew up and what they kind of instilled in us. And a lot of people listening is to save your money. But I found, until I had Bitcoin, I found it impossible to save my money, because I was like, well, aside from saving up a little bit for real estate or being able to carry my real estate. But then my real estate started buying the real estate. So then my savings were less important for that. And then it was like, well, I might as well spend my savings on improving my life now, because there's just nothing I can put it in that I'm really confident that the value is going to be there in the future. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to start trying to pick stocks. I didn't want to do mutual funds. I didn't want to do the RSP. I didn't want to do even the TFSA. And then Bitcoin kind of stumbled along when Tom started talking about it in the office. And then it's totally shifted my mindset to now it's like, okay, now I want to be a long-term saver. Now I have something to actually save for.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, at least in my opinion, Bitcoin is almost, it's like the perfect savings vehicle for people who are even younger than us, like Gen Z and stuff, because even they see it, right? Like they just kind of know that they're not going to be able to afford a house pretty much in their entire lifetimes. They're going to be renting for all their life. And they don't really have kind of the same asset to protect their earnings and their wealth. And I think for them, like, Bitcoin would be the perfect thing to save in, because one, you don't need like huge amounts of capital like you do for real estate. There's not a whole lot of like management required. There's little risk in terms of like, you could have a tenant that's not paying, and you could have like interest rates go up on you and all of that. So it's like it's an equivalent of like having a savings account, but one that is not going to lose value to inflation. Mm-hmm. So it's just like if I was younger, like if I was like a Gen Z, I would probably be saving in that. Especially if I knew that I couldn't get real estate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you can get a property, great, grab one up. And then I think if you can't get a property,
just
there's still an option. There's still an option out there.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you look at what's outperforming inflation, it's like the Magnificent Seven tech stocks, which are also pretty volatile.
And expensive to get. Like they're each like probably like over $100.
Yeah, true. Yeah, depending on how much money you're trying to put away. Yeah, it can be expensive to get. And I don't want to personally invest in those companies. I use a lot of the products from those companies, like we all do in our daily lives, Apple and Amazon and Google. Like I'm a fan of some of those companies, but I just don't understand them. I don't understand the risks. I don't understand everything they have going on in the marketplace. There's just a lot I don't understand. And so I don't really want to be a part of it. And I've done a deep enough dive with Bitcoin that I at least understand it. So yeah, if you're young, you can't buy real estate. You should definitely try, and you should partner up with friends, with family. You should do everything you can to buy it. And house hacking is definitely the best way to be able to get in, because you can have income coming in. You don't even need a 20% down payment, because if you're going to move into the property, you can put less than 20% down, and that mortgage interest gets amortized over your entire mortgage. So it's not as bad as people think. Because I've had people tell me like, when you bought your first property, don't you have to pay mortgage insurance? And it's like, well, look at the big picture of what real estate's done for the last, 30, 40 years. Would you rather own it or not own it?
Yeah.
And so I'm okay to pay a little bit higher of a mortgage payment if that means I can get into the market.
Yeah.
So I think people need to consider that. And a lot of people I find that have given up on owning a house that are young, they don't even know that they have insured mortgages, that you can put less than 20% down, because saving up 150 grand to buy a house in Southern Ontario, that just is not feasible for a lot of people. But saving up 40 grand could be 40 to 50 grand. Like now that's something that's actually attainable within a few years of hard saving and some sacrifice. So definitely get in if you can. House hacking is the best way, because it's like great practice to be a landlord, because the tenant's living in the other unit. You've got income coming in every month to help you with your own living situations, which helps because the cost, it's not even cheap to rent either, right? So, and aside from that, I mean, to start your own business, sure. But for a lot of people that just want to be like a nurse or a dental hygienist, like my girlfriend, for example, she's not entrepreneurial at all, but she still wants to be able to save for retirement. So she needs a way to do that. You're not left with many options.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like house hacking was what I wanted to do with real estate initially, is just kind of be able to buy a house, live in part of it, and rent out the other half. So like my initial idea was kind of like buy a duplex.
Same.
But again, just because of like how high the prices were, and I couldn't like, even after partnering up with my sister, there was only so much that I can qualify for.
Yeah.
So, like we ended up buying our house in Welland, and even if I want, like, it's a nice area, but if I want to live there, like that's one heck of a commute.
Yeah.
So I didn't really want to do that. So I just ended up like renting out the whole house. But house hacking would have definitely been like the smart thing to do.
Yeah. But then you have to look at your lifestyle, because we both, live and work here in Oakville. And so that's just a brutal commute going from Welland to Oakville.
Yeah.
So I think you made a solid move. And that's another move people don't think about, is like rent where you want to live and then own where you can make money.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have to become a landlord. So there's a learning curve and there's risk associated with that. But if you educate yourself properly, you can mitigate a lot of that. But it's a good option. And it's one people completely discount, I think.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's you just have to weigh the options and find out what works for your situation. Like, you don't have to do what somebody else is doing exactly the way they're doing it. You just have to kind of look at something and be, okay, is this going to work for me? Like, you don't have to bend yourself out of shape trying to, do a strategy that you see working for someone else. If it doesn't work for you, you can tweak it. You can try something else and just because like in the end, like you're the one that has to deal with this asset. You're the one that's going to have to manage it. So if you're just doing it because other people are doing it, even though knowing it doesn't really work for you, you're not going to like doing it for the long term. And with real estate, you kind of want to be thinking long term. Yeah,
you have to be. Definitely don't trade it. You and me both work in office in the GTA. So we have to be here, which means if we want to live somewhere more affordable, that's a hell of a commute that we're looking at. And so we both own real estate in the Niagara region and then both live in and around Oakville. where our commute's really, small, and we get to live in a nice community, and we get to still benefit from home ownership. But I know other people that work from home and they can house hack because they can buy a place in Kitchener or Cambridge or London or Barrie, and they have the option of house hacking because they can afford the home out in those shoulder markets, and they can live there.
Yeah, so it's like that strategy works out for them, right? But it might not necessarily work out for you or me. So you just have to find the strategy that works best for you, just for like your own situation.
Yeah, and I think co-ownership is going to become more and more common, and like weird co-ownership with like friends and sisters buying houses. Like obviously, like husbands and wives buying a house together has been super common because that's just what you do. But now it's going to be weird. It's going to be like cousins going in on a property together. Maybe somebody lives there, maybe somebody doesn't. But I think a lot of people are going to be scared out of doing that too, because a lot of people just don't want to be landlords.
Yeah, I feel a lot of people definitely just have this apprehension about, I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to deal with bad tenants, and I don't want to have to do maintenance. And honestly, like maybe this is just my own situation. Like maybe it's different for you, or maybe it's different for other people. But again, like if you kind of do your due diligence beforehand and you get in good tenants, one, you're not going to have to deal with a lot of those kind of common problems that people associate with being a landlord. You're not, driving out to your property every other day or every week just to kind of like deal with an issue. You're not getting calls and texts incessantly about kind of maintenance and stuff. And even with the maintenance, I mean, if you can do your own repairs, obviously you'll be saving a lot of money. But even though I've had my tenants reach out to me for repairs or things breaking down, and a lot of the times I don't even go there myself. Like I'll just, whoever technician or professional I'll call, they just end up going there. They arrange the time with the tenant, and I don't have to drive up all the way to Welland. I don't have to do any of that. So it just it's not, I don't know. Like it's not as, for me, like being a landlord, maybe it's just like from one experience, but it's not the terrifying experience I thought it was going to be, or that, that I've seen even other people in my life who own real estate have dealt with. So it's just, you don't just figure out what you can do to kind of minimize the work for yourself, and just kind of, just like make it work for your own situation.
What was it like finding a tenant?
It was a little bit nerve-wracking at first because I wasn't getting a lot of good leads at first, and my first mortgage payment was coming up. And I was like, oh no, we're going to have to cover this first mortgage payment because I can't find anybody. And I don't know what it was, if it was like a slow time or something, but I remember like the one thing, like I kept kind of going to Mike, who was kind of helping me with it, Mike and Charles, and even talking to Tom and Nick about like, okay, like I can't find a tenant yet. I'm kind of panicking a little bit. So there was definitely a bit of a panic, but they all kind of reassured me that like you still have to hold out for good tenants, right? Because it's better to wait than to kind of get someone in who you're not too sure about. So that reassurance was kind of like it helped me kind of just stay focused and not, make a decision out of desperation. So yeah, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, but overall it was good.
How long did it take?
Man, I don't remember.
4 weeks?
We closed, I think in July. And we ended up having to do some renos and stuff. So I think the house was ready by maybe mid-August. And then we ended up getting a tenant to move in for the 1st of October.
Okay.
Because I think like once the renos were done, I really started to kind of push the advertising. I was still doing some advertising before that, but once the renos were done, I had like updated pictures and stuff. I was able to really push that advertising, and yeah, like it didn't take long. Like it didn't take that long to find a tenant.
And how have those tenants been?
They've been really good so far. I only taught, they're a family of 4. I only really have communication with one of them. But no, he's been very good. He's cooperative. He kind of like lets me know if something is broken, and, you know, he's understanding when I try to fix it. Yeah, like, no, they've been really good so far.
How many times do you think you've been to the property?
Once.
Once.
Really?
To do what?
No, like, even when I say once was just like when I was like handing them the keys. Like, I actually haven't been back since.
It's been over a year now?
Yeah, this is in 2022.
Yeah.
I know I'm supposed to do inspections, but I haven't. Yeah.
You only start doing inspections once you...
shit hits the fan.
Yeah, once shit hits the fan, you're like, wow, I really should have been doing inspections.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I still kind of check in every once in a while. You know, like, I'll remind them to kind of like update the furnace filters and stuff like that. But I haven't actually gone there to do a check on the property since I handed them the keys.
Yeah. How's your sister managed with it all?
Mostly she leaves it up to me.
Yeah.
When I went back to Egypt in 2022, and right before I left, my tenant texted me, and he was like, you know, I think it was the furnace. Like, the furnace is not working. Literally the day, like, I was leaving. And I was like, I just handed it to my sister. I'm like, okay, this is your problem now. You know, call Mike, kind of, he'll tell you what to do, and then just figure it out with the tenant. So she's kind of almost like a backup, but she mostly leaves all of kind of like the management of the tenant. Even when I was like looking for tenants and advertising, I was kind of doing most of the work, which I don't mind. I actually like the experience. She was helping me a little bit, but most of it was me. So she kind of takes a more kind of like hands-off approach. Yeah. Which I don't mind. I actually enjoyed doing that. Like, that whole process was actually interesting for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then you can teach her how to do it in the future too.
I don't think she'll be into it.
No, maybe not.
I don't think so.
Well, yeah, I definitely find it's good to learn every square inch of the business that you can. From the bookkeeping to the management to the tenant placement to dealing with the contractors, setting up the utilities, like everything, because now you just know what to do. And then when there's a tenant turnover or a maintenance thing, you don't freak out because you already have the playbook. Yeah. You know what you're doing. And then if she's ever gone, you can still, or if you're gone to Egypt, something happens, you can still coach her through it. It just works out that way. I found like a nice benefit of owning these houses with my friends is like we are there as backup. And there's been certain times whether I'm on a trip or away or just incapacitated because I've got too much other stuff on the go, we can cover for each other. And obviously it's important to partner with the right person because that could go south real quick. Yeah,
because it's like any business. If you have the wrong partner, it's just going to be like twice as hard.
Yeah. And you have to expect that if you're listening to this podcast right now, like you're going to be the one doing all the work. Like your friend probably isn't listening to this podcast that you're going to partner with. If you do that, it's probably going to be you. You're probably going to do most of the work. But it's a good thing because you're learning all this stuff. And then one day, hopefully you're going to be able to build up enough equity where you can go out and do this stuff by yourself one day. You might not even need partners. You know, me and my partner Adrian talk about it all the time. Like, one day we might not even need to own these places together. Like, we'll have built up enough equity on our own that we can go out and part ways, but we both know what we're doing and divide and conquer.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad skill to have, whether or not you're going to use it. Like, whether or not I buy another investment real estate, I still know how to find tenants. I know how to kind of screen them. I know how to, I've already done it, so I know how to do it. So it's not like you're, like, they're not bad skills to have.
Yeah. Another thing is, like, with your friend, if you're the one doing all the work, I always still remind myself, like, without these guys I'm partnered with, like, I could never own any real estate. So, like, I'm just super grateful to have them in the first place because it allows me to own this real estate. I'd rather own 50% of some real estate in Southern Ontario and do most of the work than own 0% of real estate in Ontario and do no work. So there's trade-offs, and you always have to remember, like, okay, without this person, I couldn't be doing this at all. That's something I've kind of had to remind myself.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's like I said, like I actually enjoyed doing the work and I didn't mind my sister leaving it all to me. Also because I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I wanted to do it all by myself. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, even when you say work, like it's not super, like it's not, you're not doing like hard labor, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of
Sometimes.
work. There's,
I don't know about you. I've done some hard labor.
That's true. But like, it's not, the whole thing is not hard labor.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yeah.
And it's, I found that even though like it was sometimes like there was kind of like hard labor involved or there was a lot of work involved, I actually liked doing it because it was for something that I owned. Like it was my kind of, like it was my thing.
Yeah, you're building your little financial fortress.
Yeah, and it's almost like the motivation. Like I didn't have to motivate myself to go and find good tenants. I was just doing it because like, oh, okay, this is mine. I want it to turn out right. Like this is my project. I want it to turn out right. And it was just like I found it kind of almost like it was easy for me to do the work. Just like easy to kind of want to do the work because it was something that I wanted to work out. So it's not work that you have to go and convince yourself, oh my God, I have to go and find tenants today. Like it's, for me at least, it was just something that it was easy for me to put effort into.
How does a young person get ahead in Egypt or Saudi? Is it still the traditional go to school, get a good job, you'll get decently ahead? Or is it just as kind of messed up economically there as it is here, if not more there?
So Egypt and Saudi economically are very different. Saudi, you would be much more well off. And I mean, it depends on whether you're a Saudi or a foreigner, but don't ask me to talk too much about Saudi because I was still young most of my life that I lived there.
Well, let's go with more with Egypt then. I feel like that's more.
I mean, yeah, with Egypt, like if you're a young person, like, yeah, the traditional route, pretty much the only route is that you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job. The one thing I would say is that it's pretty, a lot of people in Egypt will also kind of like start businesses, a small business, a big business. Like there's just no shortage of small businesses of like any type or any kind that you can imagine. So it's.
Are these their full-time gigs mainly, or people are just doing this stuff on the side?
Bit of both.
Yeah.
Bit of both. Like I feel, this is just my impression. It's just kind of like, it's almost like entrepreneurship is a little bit in like the DNA of most Egyptians. Just because like it's a very kind of survival culture, right? Like the economy is not really that great. There aren't a whole lot of job opportunities that really will pay you well that you can live off of. So what a lot of people will do is they'll just kind of go their own way and they'll start their own thing, whether it's online or, I mean, restaurants and cafes are very popular in Egypt. So that's kind of like the easiest thing to start, is just open a new coffee shop. And yeah, so there's two options definitely for young people.
Can people retire in Egypt? Is it the same concept of retirement that we have? Or is it?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
I only know two people who are retired, and those are my grandparents.
Yeah. So it's possible.
I guess it is possible. I mean, they were a teacher, so they do have a pension and stuff. I don't know how it works if you're like in the private sector and you have a job in like a private company.
Yeah.
I'm sure like different companies have their own setups. You know, like you get a pension or a retirement or something. But I think what most people do is they just rely on their own savings. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking of savings, so you were showing us that they devalued the currency by 50%. Was it like 2 weeks ago? So overnight, they literally devalued it.
Yeah. They don't ask me to explain how it works, but they did something called floating the exchange rate or introducing a flexible exchange rate. And that apparently just tanks the value of the local currency compared to like the USD. Yeah, don't ask me to explain any more than that because it's too complicated for me to get into.
Well, it's wild because we were all looking at the Bitcoin charts in the office. And if you look at Bitcoin versus different currencies, like it spells out an entirely different picture of Bitcoin, because you look at it it's at the all-time high in any currency right now, including the US dollar. But if you look at it, the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar, you can see there's been more of a price run up in Canada versus the US. And that's because there's been more inflation in Canada than the US. And if you look at it in hyperinflated currencies like Argentina or Turkey or Lebanon or Venezuela, you see just like Bitcoin has skyrocketed, and it spells out an entirely different picture. Like the importance of owning a hard asset and hard currency in a country where your currency is hyperinflating versus just regular inflation is astonishing.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy to see. Like we were looking at it, and it just like in Egyptian pound, it went from like 2 million per Bitcoin to like 3.2 or 3.3.
Yeah, literally overnight.
And it's just it's amazing because like some people still say that like, oh, Bitcoin is not a hedge against inflation because it's so volatile or whatever. And I'm like, just look at the chart. It's almost like a perfect, like they're in perfect sync. Like as like a currency kind of goes down in value, Bitcoin goes up in value in that currency.
Double whammy.
Yeah, so it's just like,
well, if you had held your money in the, what's the currency called?
Egyptian pound.
The Egyptian pound. If you held your currency in the Egyptian pound, versus Bitcoin, like everything in the country just went on almost.
You've either lost 50% of your savings or you've gained 50%.
Yeah.
Because you held it in Bitcoin.
The whole country, all the products and services, everything you've ever wanted to buy in that country just went on a 50% sale overnight because you held your value in a different medium.
Yeah, it's just wild to think about. I mean, I get like people say it's like so volatile, but that's because one, we can actually see the change on a daily basis, even on an hourly basis with Bitcoin. You don't see that with local currency. You don't see that with fiat currencies. You just hear the news of like, oh, it's 2% per year, even though it's not really 2%. It's usually much higher than that. But it's almost like there's just this perception that Bitcoin is more volatile than local currency. But that's because it's tied to currencies that are just not stable to begin with.
And we were laughing at another video yesterday of Justin Trudeau, who is criticizing Pierre Poilievre for telling Canadians that they could opt out of inflation during the pandemic by buying Bitcoin, because Bitcoin at the time was going up a lot in price. It was the last bull run. And then
it went down in price for a little bit. I think when he was doing that video, I think it had like crashed or whatever. So Trudeau was mocking him, and now like gotcha moment, yeah.
And now we look at the price today, and we're like, okay, Trudeau. Well, he was kind of right if you look at a longer time horizon, and it's up right now. Maybe it's down again, but just look over the last 15 years. It's the best performing asset.
Yeah, it's like what's that number that I think Tom shared even on a podcast before? It's like the
compound annual growth rate, 44%.
44%.
Compounded.
Like compare that to your like money that you have in your savings account.
Yeah.
Even an account that earns interest rate, like what's the highest interest rate you can get? 2% right now on a savings account,
sure.
Maybe if you're lucky.
Yeah, or you could buy a GIC, maybe get 5%, but then your money's locked up.
But that's 5% like what, like 5 years?
Yeah, it's not liquid.
1 year and it's not liquid. Again, this is just me like having my money locked up in something.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, especially something that, like by the time you cash it out, it's not going to have the same value. You made a little bit more in like nominal terms, like you went from $100 to $200.
Yeah.
But now $200 doesn't really get you the same amount that your $100 would have. It's just not, doesn't really protect your money from inflation at all.
Yeah, well, people get caught up in the nominal number so much. And I don't blame anyone for doing that. And it's just what you're born into. It's like the air you breathe. It's like everything, you measure value in Canadian dollars in your head because that's how you've been trained to do it since you were a kid, and you've never known any other way that you could measure value. And it's a horrible way to measure value because the measurement always changes because the denominator always changes. It always keeps growing and expanding. So if you had 21 million Canadian coins, 21 million Canadian dollars, right? But now next year it's 30 million. But now next year it's 40 million. And when you started out, you had, 100 out of the 21 million Canadian coins. But then the next year you have 100 of 30 million Canadian coins. Then you have 100 of 40 million Canadian coins. It's like your share of the Canadian coins
is just getting smaller and smaller.
Keeps getting devalued. So you can buy less and less of everything that's measured in the Canadian coins. Whereas if it had been the 21 million and stayed the 21 million.
Even if your share stayed the same, that 100, its value, like it
would always buy you the same amount.
Yeah.
And actually, as things improve over time, because capitalism makes things better, faster, cheaper, everything actually falls.
Jeff Booth now.
Everything actually falls. And once you see this stuff, like I was texting Tom last night, it's like seeing the Matrix. Like I walk around now and I feel like I can see the green code. And I hear these, and my girlfriend put on like a John Oliver video or something where he was criticizing the housing crisis, and I just was shaking my head at the entire video because I was like, this is
blaming landlords and investors,
greedy landlords and unjust laws and
no rent control,
and he's very left, right? So he was banging on all like the leftist talking points, and I was just shaking my head because I'm like, well, what's the M2 growth? Well, look at the real estate market compared to the M2 growth. Why aren't you looking at that, John Oliver? Because that spells a lot more of what's actually happening. Because when you map the two, they go up hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's the single biggest driver of real estate prices.
Yeah, like the real estate itself, like it goes up in price, even though its utility value hasn't changed. But is it really going up in price, or is the measuring stick we're using to decide its value just becoming worthless? Mm-hmm. Right? And it's like that example you said, like, if you own 100 of, 21 million Canadian dollars, but then next year that 21 million becomes 30 million, it's like, even if you're investing it, say, in like a GIC or stocks, and that 100 grows to 300, well, that 30 million is growing to, it went from 21 million to 40 million. Like, it's just because central banks can just kind of like create trillions of dollars in the blink of an eye. There's no other, like you'll never be able to have that numerator kind of grow fast enough to keep up with that.
Yeah.
Unless you have, like an asset that will track the value of that denominator.
Yeah. Well, I've used this example in the podcast before, but like, let's say you worked your entire life, 40 years, and you saved up $1 million. And then in 1 year, there's 10% inflation because somebody pressed a key on the keyboard to print 10% of the total money supply. Yeah,
we need to go into lockdown, guys. We have to, give everybody $10 million. It's like, well, now what?
Yeah, so your $1 million got debased by 10%. So it's now $900,000 of the same purchasing power that you had with the million. Mm-hmm. Well, if you worked 40 years to save that $1 million, I think if you divide $1 million by 40, that's $25,000 a year you save to get to that number. And in 1 year, they just deleted 4 years of your life with 10% inflation. Oh, bad inflation count this year. Mm-hmm. COVID, Putin.
Yeah, exactly.
There goes 4 years of your life.
Yeah.
It's like, that's your life. That is the most valuable currency of all. Like, that's your life. Yeah. 4 years, deleted.
Never going to get that back.
Deleted.
Yeah.
It's criminal. Like, it honestly is criminal. It sucks.
I think if more people understood just how badly their, not just their money, like, just forget about the money. It's like you said, like, your life and your time are just being devalued. If more people understood that, I don't know. I just feel like we'll have, like, just a lot more people being angry and protesting in the streets.
Oh my God, the anger levels would have to skyrocket.
Yeah, it's only really out of ignorance, and like it's not.
Well, people are just angry, but people are angry at a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm. Like they, I feel like instinctively, the majority of people know their money gets debased, and that's why you're always looking to invest it in something.
Or spend it. But like, if you don't see a hope for your future, you might as well just spend it.
Exactly, which I think is a lot of what, like Gen Z kids will say. Like they yeah, like what's the point? Like I'm just going to enjoy my life now, get experiences now rather than save. Like there's no point in saving.
Yeah.
And it's just because
I can't even buy a house, let alone save for retirement.
Yeah, so I might as well just live my life now, right?
And they're not wrong. They're making logical decisions.
Exactly.
And you can say, oh, younger generations don't know how to sacrifice for the future. Maybe human beings are the exact same as we've always been. And it's like the environment dictates your behavior. That's what frustrates me about older generations kind of shitting on millennials and Gen Zs.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, well,
we've also had it pretty good too. Like we've had a pretty good run, like at least living in the Western world, like I've had a comfortable existence growing up. So like maybe some of the criticism's fair. I'll be, sure. But
yeah, but a lot of it is like when it comes to money, it's not as fair because we keep we're basically coming in at the short end of the stick, if that makes sense. Like
the can has just been kicked down the road for so long. The debt's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and it's just the opportunities are not the same. Like technology keeps evolving faster than we can keep up with it. And that also kind of affects what opportunities are available, right? Like if you're in university now and you're studying to be, you're in computer science and you're worried by the time you graduate, are you going to be able to get a job as a software engineer or a developer because like AI is developing so fast. Like it's just, and then on top of that, you have your money not keeping its values. Even if you have savings, like you're just screwed.
I feel terrible when I do these tenant placements, and sometimes I get these young people that want to buy a house, but they can't because they're just priced out or they're scared of interest rates. And for whatever reason, they're out on the sidelines, but they've got the money in their account because I do my Verifast check and I check their bank accounts and I see like some of these young people, I don't know how they got it, but they'll have like $100,000 in the bank account. And I just like want to
feel bad.
I feel bad because I'm like, you don't even know how much is being stolen from you by your own government.
Yeah.
And they're not even going to ever take the blame for it or be accountable to that. And what am I going to like give them a copy of the Bitcoin Standard? Like they're just...
Or you could, I don't know, you could change their life.
You could. I've chatted with, I almost JV partnered with one girl who I put in a property because I was looking for a partner for my girlfriend so she could buy a property. And was sending her Rockstar YouTube videos and stuff. She's like, oh, this is actually really cool. I almost had her, but luckily we got another great person.
She slipped away.
Still
maybe you had an impact. Maybe she'll actually like look into this stuff on her own.
Yeah, well, that's why I think it's important to talk about Bitcoin. And you might think we're crazy if you hear us talking about it, and because we're so sold on it. And you have to go through the journey of understanding how secure the network is. It's the strongest computing network in the entire world.
You have to really understand what it means for your money, for you to lose your life savings so quickly. And I think that's what's missing in like North America, especially because we still do have strong currencies compared to like a lot of other places.
Yeah.
And we just we've never really experienced hyperinflation. We don't know what it's like to wake up and have, prices go up 50%.
Well, we've just been boiled slowly.
Exactly. And so there's no sense of urgency to kind of, jump out of that boiling pot.
Yeah.
But once you actually understand it, like, I don't know, I just fear that for some people who maybe are not paying attention or choose not to pay attention, like by the time they realize the pot is boiling, it'll be too late. So it's almost like you don't have to kind of, buy it if you don't want to, but at least just kind of understand how kind of like your money is just losing value. And, just look at ways to kind of protect yourself from that because I don't know, I just don't think GICs are going to do it.
No. Though a lot of young people don't get caught up in all the FUD with Bitcoin. I mean, they're more accepting of it, I think, than older generations. And I think we'll slowly transition as literally people just die off. And we further enter into more and more of a digital age. People will accept natively digital money. And once you understand there's only 21 million of these things, the cryptography behind the network,
that's another thing.
The credibility that Bitcoin now has with public institutions, corporations, governments, national governments now buying and holding on their balance sheet. I think it's just going to come with time.
Yeah, time. And I think there still has to be kind of like a tipping point. Like at least in North America, like there has to be a tipping point that gets people to actually look at their currency and be like, oh, wait a minute, this is no good. I have to kind of start using this now. Mm-hmm. So I still think that it's like what happened with like the Freedom Convoy, when like the government froze so many people's bank accounts and they couldn't access their money. They couldn't pay bills, they couldn't pay their mortgages, they couldn't pay rent. And that ended up actually driving some people to look into things like Bitcoin, to kind of like get out of the, you know, like the traditional financial system, which is just heavily controlled. Like it's very controlled. And they were like, wait a minute, I don't have control over my own money. I better, look into some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. I think that if we have something like that combined with a scenario where like we get hyperinflation or we get really bad inflation for a little while, it's going to slowly kind of convert more people to look into things like Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, Bitcoin's got the best marketing team in the world, man. You've got governments printing money like crazy. Yeah. You've got Trudeau freezing bank accounts. You've got 1,000,001 reasons to buy and own this stuff.
All free.
All free marketing. Yeah. COVID obviously was a huge wake-up call, I think, for both you and me, for how the economy works, how money works, and for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Because 33% of the money supply was printed.
Yeah, in like 3 years, I think.
Yeah. And,
forget the time frame.
And so like the boiling had a really sharp increase and we all felt the heat, and we're still feeling the heat, and we're going to continue feeling the heat for the next decade, just from that money printing, let alone the continued money printing. M2 dipped in Canada, now is going back up. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the States, but eventually back up. Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't really stop. Like even though headlines would say, inflation went down. Well, inflation didn't really go down. It's just not increasing as fast. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that prices are going down. It's like we're not going to see 2020 prices anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like inflation is permanent. It just it's only up from here.
Yeah, it is. I like how Michael Saylor talks about inflation. He's broken it down like better than anyone I've ever heard, where he's like, inflation's a vector. It's not just like this one linear number for everyone in society. Like if you live in your parents' basement and you have no aspirations and you just want to eat Doritos and play video games all day, your rate of inflation is the price of beer, Doritos, pizza, and video game costs. And if you want to be middle class and own a home in a nice suburb and send your kids to school and put them through sports and take a vacation once or twice a year, that's your inflation rate for all those things. And if you want to be uber wealthy and own a private jet and a Lamborghini and live in the Hamptons and go to a restaurant 5 nights a week and pay for personal waiter service, that's your inflation rate. So it depends on what you're looking for in life. But all the things that mean the most in life, such as food, energy, housing, retirement, so the cost of assets to buy so you can actually retire one day, those tuition, education, all of those things are inflating more than anything else. Mm-hmm. Fuel.
Yeah. Just the cost of living, like just think about what your parents, it's like that, I don't know if you've seen it, but for a while there was this meme going around with Kevin from Home Alone walking home with like 2 bags of groceries worth like $20. It was, I think, in the movie. And it's like today, like what does $20 get you in groceries? Yeah. Practically nothing. And so that is the literal kind of representation of inflation.
Yeah.
You just cannot buy, like your money does not buy what it used to. And it's not because corporations are greedy or whatever. It's just because like that denominator keeps growing and what you own of the numerator, it's not growing the same way. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. We ranted about inflation a lot. We can fill 2 podcasts just talking about this.
It's just top of mind, I think, for both of us all the time, right? It's hard not to think about it.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating because what do you do about it? And most people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, like learning about economics and finance is so intimidating because in our current system, it's so complicated. Like, even though I know some of this stuff, a lot of it is just so over my head. I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, I still don't understand how some of this stuff works. I'm like, how does the bond market work again? Why does that affect interest rates? Like, I don't really, like, some of it is just so over my head that I'm just like, yeah, like, I can understand why so many people find this intimidating. Like, they don't have maybe the interest or even the energy to look into it. They just want to work, live, and, save for retirement or save for emergencies. But they can't just passively do that because their money just keeps losing value, whether they're doing the right thing or not.
Mm-hmm. It's a double squeeze because as your money loses value, your cost of living goes up, which leaves you less money left over to buy assets, things like real estate and Bitcoin, which can protect you from inflation and even benefit from the inflation. So you're getting double squeezed, and there's nothing you can do about it except hunker down, second job, third job, cut expenses, increase your income, and just try to opt out. And it's kind of like the fight of our generation, I feel like.
I think so, yeah.
Like that this is our world war, you know what I mean? Every generation's got their thing. I've just accepted. I think the question of our time is like, how did you survive the inflation? Because I think it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to get better unless all these governments just stop adding trillions of dollars a week to their
I didn't even know how much a trillion was. Like, I Googled it the other day. I'm like, how much is a trillion?
It's an insane.
It's 1,000 billion.
Yeah.
I think I have that right. It's 1,000 billion. Because I was like, I need to put this into perspective because the US debt is, I think, now 35 trillion. Like, okay, I know trillions, a lot of billions, but how many billions? So, okay, it's 1,000 billion, and then a billion's 1,000 million. Is
it 1,000 billion?
I think so. I could be wrong. My phone's off, so I'm not going to pull it up right now.
The millennials right here.
I think it's 1,000 billion. Yeah, 1,000 million. I'm 90% sure.
I don't know. I'll never own that amount, so I don't know what it looks like.
It's so much money.
Yeah.
It's never getting paid back.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never gonna get paid back. Or like the only way to pay it back is to just keep borrowing from the future.
And how much so if you wanted to pay it back through money printing, which is how they're going to pay it back, that's sucking $35 trillion out of the system to pay it back. But they have to create the new 35 trillion to pay back the 35 trillion. So there's interest on the 35 trillion they just created. That's why
it's like it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like, it's just, there's always going to be a deficit because of the way the system is set up.
Which needs more deficit to pay for the deficit.
Yeah. You're just living on a credit card, and there's no way that your incoming money will ever be able to cover that much debt. So it's just a continuous deficit. With a continuous deficit, continuous money printing, continuous inflation.
I think that's just what's so humbling about Bitcoin to me, because it's like, you can no longer get ahead, Anthony, by getting into debt, which is how I've gotten ahead with real estate, is getting into what I would consider good debt because it allows me to own the hard assets. But even things like, I financed my truck in 2021, 2022, whenever I did, and it was a 3.49% interest rate, and the used car market was going crazy, new cars were going crazy, and for some reason Ford released this Maverick truck at a super low price point, and I was like, this seems odd, because I was in the market for just a used SUV or something. Like, this seems pretty odd, low interest rate. I think this is a good move with everything going up so much in price. So I financed it, and now it's selling for like $7,000 more 2 years later, and all the interest costs over the 7 years was like $5,000 in interest that I'm going to pay over 7 years. Not to mention the dollars I keep paying back every year are worth less and less in real purchasing power terms, which is you can't understand because it's nominally hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But like, you see the matrix code and you know that those dollars are worth less.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, that was a good move, getting in debt to buy this new truck, which is crazy. Because now with Bitcoin, it's like, I can't get in debt to buy this stuff, except maybe if I could, take a loan that's covered by cash flow from a property or something. I haven't done that, but like, no, I need actual hard savings. Like, to own Bitcoin, you need to be a profitable business or a profitable human being, because you can buy some, But eventually you're going to run out of money to pay the bills because you're just a negative cash flow person or business. And then so you got to dip into your savings. And because it's so volatile, you could be wiping yourself out by doing that because you're buying this asset and then selling it at a lower price just because of how volatile it is. Like you have to be positive cash flow for like 3, 4, 5 years plus so that you can stock money in this thing. And then if you do need to access the money in the future, it'll be worth more than what you put in. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So it really humbles you because it's like, well, you don't buy it on debt. There's no hack for getting it.
Unless you're the government and you can buy it on debt and just have taxpayers cover the cost.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the first central bank that starts printing their own currency and buying up all the Bitcoin wins. Mm-hmm. Like how much of a advanced run could you have?
How badly do you want to do that? I wish I could do that.
I wish I could do that. Print money to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's been humbling for me because it's like, oh, it's back to like how things should be, which is like decrease your expenses, increase your income, and save money. Mm-hmm. There's no fancy financing trick. I can't joint venture with somebody. There's no hack for doing this. There's no refi. Like it's just buying and holding this thing and having savings and spending less than I earn.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing because you actually live within your means.
Yeah, that's how money should be.
Yeah.
That's how money was before, we just were introduced to like freaking fiat and central banks and all that crap.
Well, I heard a good podcast the other day and the guy's like, look, I look at fiat like a blip. There was 5,000 years of gold as money. There was this weird in-between thing as fiat as money. Now there's the next 5,000 years Bitcoin as money. I was like, I like that. And whether or not it becomes a medium of exchange, I don't care. I think it will, mm-hmm. but I do not care because it solves the number one problem I have with my money, which is I can't save it mm-hmm. into the future across time and space.
Yeah.
And now I have an option.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I think if I didn't get into real estate, I would have probably put everything I have into Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I would probably put all of that, like whatever I saved for like the down payment and stuff, I would probably just put all of that into Bitcoin. Yeah. Like to me, that's like the real way of saving money. Like it doesn't make sense to save money in something that will depreciate. Like you don't save your money in a bunch of vehicles and a bunch of cars. You have to save it in something that will actually either keep its value or increase in value. So I would have probably just put all my money into Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, I mean, depending on how inflationary your currency is, you could be saving in cars and consumer goods, right?
Yeah, cars could be worth more than whatever your local currency is, which happens.
It does happen. It's just how bad is the inflation? Like for my example, during COVID, inflation got pretty bad in North America with the money printing. And it's like, okay, buying the consumer good
was better than holding the money.
Was better, I think. Yeah. It sounds so crazy and it sounds like bad advice, but
that's how it is in places like, like Venezuela and Argentina. Like people will spend their paycheck on, like washing machines because, the money will lose value the next day. So I'd rather just own something useful than keep paper money that I won't be able to exchange for this washing machine the next day.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's just crazy to think about.
Well, buying real estate, one of the biggest benefits of buying real estate that nobody talks about is the fact you're paying your mortgage back every single year with dollars that are worth less. And you can't...
Honestly, I still haven't fully wrapped my mind around that concept. Like I get it, but I kind of can't really picture it.
Well, your mortgage payment's $2,000 mm-hmm. a month or so $24,000 a year into 30 years. And as each year goes by, that $24,000 that you're paying is worth less and less in real purchasing power terms because it's been debased. Like that $24,000 in year 1 buys you a lot more than it does in year 10, at least double as much as it buys you in year 20. Mm-hmm. And in year 30, it's probably lost all the value. Like $24,000 is like a loaf of bread.
Yeah. Yeah. That will probably be a reality in the future.
Well, like my grandpa's first house was, I think, in the 50s or 60s in St. Catharines. The first house he bought, it was $10,000. And it was in the exact same neighborhood that I own 2 houses today. Meriton in St. Catharines.
Probably not worth $10,000.
At least 500 now.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
So 10 times 10.
And that's just, you said your grandpa?
Yeah.
That's 3 generations. Like it's
3 generations. The dollar's completely lost all its value. Yeah. So no, we haven't had hyperinflation, but we have had that's just a term. Hyperinflation, I think, is above 30% inflation a year is the technical term for hyperinflation. So it's like, no, we haven't had hyperinflation. We've just had whatever you want to call it, great inflation. Like, it's just terms we're talking about here. The point is, the dollar's lost 99% of its value from when my grandpa bought that house to when I bought my house.
Yeah.
And had he owned the real estate, it would have been a way to protect. And a large part is because of the leverage, because he didn't have to put as much down. And so the asset was going up in price on only a small portion of what he put down. But then also because the mortgage he paid back was worth less and less and less and less and less. Like in Egypt, if you had a mortgage in Egypt and they devalued the currency overnight by 50%, like the mortgage you're paying back just got devalued by 50%.
Probably.
It's crazy. And that's why real estate's been such a great protector, and not even just a protector, a way to actually beat the inflation curve over time.
Exactly.
So what do you think for the future of young people?
What do I think for
just ranting about inflation these days?
Yeah, we're just gonna go right back to that topic.
We're slowly turning into Tom.
Yeah. Well, it's stuff that's like important to know, right? Like, it's, you work hard, you want to be able to retire at some point, and you just want to be able to have, like, you don't want to work for the rest of your life, right? Like, you want to have some savings, but you can't.
Yeah.
Just because
you got to do every tool in the toolbox. You got to get the side hustle going. You got to do the credit card reward points if you want to travel.
Well, that's you.
You got to do the real estate. You got to buy the Bitcoin. You got to hit them with everything you got, man, because they're hitting you with everything they got.
Yeah. We want to switch. You want to switch from inflation now?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to talk about?
Hammered that topic.
What about marketing? Some of the marketing stuff that we do here, it's very wacky and unique and different. And copywriting especially has caught your attention. You recently went to a copywriting conference in Texas. What was that like? Why has copywriting got your attention?
I think I've always enjoyed writing. Like, I remember even as a kid, like maybe I was like 6 or 7 years old, like I would write like short, when I say short, I mean they're really short, like short novels and short stories and stuff. I used to write a lot of letters just to my friend, like to my family, my like friends, stuff like that. So I guess I kind of just always enjoyed writing, and I don't know, copywriting is just kind of, I find it fun to kind of try to figure out how to position, a product or a service or whatever, and to kind of play around with the words and see what's like, how to like best position that thing, that value that you're trying to give to someone. So yeah, I don't know. I just find it fun, and I never, like, if you had told me that you would become like a writer, I'd have probably just laughed at you. But I don't know, like, I don't think of copywriting as the same as like writing, because it's not the same as, generating content when you like write a blog or a book or even a novel. Like, it's specific, like it's writing with a specific purpose, which I think I like, because I like to have a purpose for what I'm doing, and just copywriting just kind of fits that perfectly. How
important is it creating those frames around the value that you are trying to promote or share or communicate? Like, how do you create that value through writing?
How? I guess I just kind of, like, I don't know if I have like an exact process. I will just kind of think of, okay, like, how would I communicate this this product or this service as, how would I communicate that to, someone in my family? How would I, talk about it to a friend? How do I talk about it to like my sister, for example? And then I just kind of like go from there. Like, I'll start literally like I'll write down, some questions like, okay, like, how will this product or whatever, like, make someone feel? Like, what's like the before and after result? It's just kind of, you just kind of like drill down into into kind of like I just start with questions, and then from the questions I kind of shape a little bit of a story that I can then use to write whatever it is I'm writing, an email or a landing page or whatever.
So how will this make the customer feel? What's their transformation from before using the product or service to after using the product or service?
Yeah, just stuff like that. Because like essentially you're trying to, it's like most people want want things that will make their lives better, right? So you just kind of,
they want the result.
Yeah, they want the result, and they want the result quickly. They want it cheaply, and they want it to be easy, and they don't want to, kind of have to do a lot of work for it. So it's just kind of positioning your offer in such a way that you clearly communicate those results to whoever is reading.
And you have to spell it out. You can't assume that the person's going to figure that out on their own.
Yeah. That's because like most people have a bunch of other stuff on their mind. Like if you're essentially kind of like getting your email or your piece of direct mail in front of them, you kind of have to convince them to even just look at it, right? Because like most people, like how much of the mail that you get, like whatever, if you want to call it junk mail, like how much of that do you look at? Probably very little, if at all. If something happens to grab your attention, then you look at it.
Yeah.
Most of it gets tossed out. So it's just kind of trying to find something that will grab their attention, and then you kind of, as you're writing, you kind of convince them, okay, like this is why this is good for you, and this is why this will make your life better.
Is the starting point really drilling deep into the mind of the person you're writing to know what's going to engage that person, and only then can you then write to engage those different triggers for that person?
I think that's like the ideal way to do it. It's just kind of like you get into the mind of your reader. I don't know if I'm very good at that. It's just it's a little bit tricky sometimes. You do have to like really know your audience, and like it's definitely a skill to kind of be able to do that. And I think that's one that I'm kind of still working on. So I can't tell you what framework I have for that.
Yeah.
Work of progress.
Well, that's something you maybe for a bigger piece, like a big sales letter or something, you drill down into. Mm-hmm. But when you're just whipping out emails and you got you have deadlines, right? You got stuff you got to get out.
Yeah.
It's tough to have the time to kind of maybe drill that deep.
Yeah. Well, with emails, you definitely, with emails, I still kind of like to just write down, okay, how do I actually want to write this email? What do I want to say about it? And who am I talking to? Because like, who are you talking to is a big part of kind of whether your copy works or not. And I just kind of like to just kind of like get a clear sense of like, okay, who am I talking to? Why am I even like what's the purpose that I'm trying to achieve? Like, what am I actually trying to achieve with this email? Like, am I trying to, send them to a sales page? Am I trying to get them to, reply to the email? Like, what action am I actually trying to get them to take?
So you're thinking of that ahead of time before you write the email? Like, what is the specific action I want this email to produce? Yeah,
like that just helps me. Everybody has their own process, but for me, like it helps me to find out, okay, what is the reason I'm actually doing this? Like, what is this for? Like I need like a bit of kind of like a context and some background info before I can start to write something. That's just kind of like part of my process, but everybody has like their own way of doing it.
Mm-hmm. So be intentional with your marketing and your copywriting. How important do you think copywriting is in the marketing toolkit?
It is essentially selling with words. So if you're in the business of selling a good or a service to someone, you want to have some knowledge of copywriting. Because it's like copywriting is pretty much on everything. Like it's not just marketing emails. It's the text that you see on like the billboards. It's the text you see on, TV ads. It's the text you see on
the package.
The package. Like that's all copy. Like someone kind of took the time to write that down. They had a reason for choosing those specific words. Like it's pretty much in everything. So if you are in marketing, you want to have some knowledge of copy.
Yeah. What about using certain words or like action words and stuff to really engage people? Like, what have you learned about some of the specific techniques that really gets people engaged? Like, I noticed you're really good with like I don't know, like almost like comic book words, like the smack, pow, like kick butt, action orientated words that I think are more engaging to read. You seem to really hammer those, which is a good thing.
I think a lot of that I got from Carleen Cole. She's a direct response copywriter, and she was, I think, one of the copywriters that I really started to follow and kind of like use a lot of her strategies in my own copy. She's really good at kind of just using words like that. Like her emails are always just like very energetic. Mm-hmm. So I kind of like when I read, I'm kind of good at kind of being able to imitate someone's vibe. So like if I read, for example, like 3 Carleen Cole emails in a row, I can kind of like get that vibe in my head and then go and write my own thing.
That's cool.
So that's also kind of like part of the process. Like I'll just go and like read. Like if I want to write a story-based email, for example, I'll go read, like one of Justin Goff's, and then I'll pick up on some of the things that he does with like how he writes the story, and then I'll go kind of use them in my own thing. Mm-hmm.
Stories are so good; they just suck you in.
Stories are so good, and they're like, at least for me, they're one of the hardest to actually be good at.
Yeah, well, especially if you're not writing your own story.
Yeah. If you're writing somebody else's story, you really do have to have enough of the details that matter.
Yeah, and the context.
Yeah,
because you're like you're trying to put yourself in their brain and how they felt, and yeah, cool. Anything else you want to chat about, Noha Abou-Hashima?
Not that I can think of, Antonio Molinaro.
Cool. Well, this was fun. What else? What should we call out? The Your Life, Your Terms event coming up Saturday, April 6th. We got our Indiana Jones hats going on here.
Yep.
Register for it. If you haven't already, if you're a Rockstar member, you can register. You can bring a guest as well, complimentary registration. And if you're not a Rockstar Inner Circle member, you can purchase tickets. As of right now, I think they're still discounted.
I think today, they're discounted to $147 plus tax.
Okay. And then as we're going to hit our cap, we always hit our cap on space on these things. So like as we get closer to the cap, we have to raise the prices. So if you want to get in, buy a ticket now. We're going to have close to 1,000 people there. Some kick butt speakers going on. So it's going to be great. So register if you haven't already. And what do you want to leave the people with, Noha?
Wow, I don't have anything prepared, man.
Anything epic to say?
Like that?
Buy Bitcoin?
Sure, yeah, and don't destroy Tom's office.
Yeah, geez, I'm destroying it here. Okay, buy Bitcoin, and we'll see you at the event.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. You can find every new episode of the Your Life, Your Terms show on all the major streaming platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. And if you'd like to get free copies of some of the books that we've put together, like these right here, or some of the reports that we've put together, like these right here, you can find all of those at www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's www.rockstarinnercircle.com. That's it for now. Until next time, your life, your terms.